Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to our first webinar speaking about a brief introduction to digital denture workflows for laboratories. I will give a very generic introduction on what 3D printing and 3D denture design is all about. Please keep in mind that we are going to have these webinars in a brief version because we're going to be having a series of them. And in the next couple of webinars, I'm going to be covering a little bit more on each of the topics that I feel like need to be expanded a little bit more. So without further ado, let's jump into this. So the first thing I always like to talk about is what the benefits of the Dentca workflow is. I'm going to share with you one of the simplest workflows for digital dentures that you'll be able to find in the market. This is a very, very easy workflow that any laboratory, any DSO with an in-house lab, or any dental office that has a printer can easily follow. There is absolutely no need to have any skilled technicians on your team to be able to follow this workflow. And it's going to blow your mind. It's incredibly simple. So the first thing I'd like to say is you can finalize a denture case in roughly about 6 to 7 hours. I'm talking start to finish, meaning from the moment you scan the impressions or you digitize them all the way to until you have the final product in your hand ready to be delivered to the patient. So that's roughly how long it takes. This speed, of course, depends on what type of printer you have. Some printers, as you know, can print a little bit faster than others, take less time to do their job. And of course, some curing units will take about half the time if they're dual curing units, meaning they have two light sources instead of one. But roughly, that's what you're looking at. It does not require third-party design services, which is a great thing. Lately, the design services, the outsourced third-party design services have been becoming less popular due to, number one, there's a complexity of use, there's long turnaround times. Normally, this third-party design services take 24 to 48 hours, and then you have to depend on their hours of operation. So if you need something designed quickly and it's Friday at 6 p.m., you might not be able to get it until Monday or Tuesday. And then ordering and filling up prescriptions with this third-party design services might take you about 10 minutes. And with the Dentca design system that I'm going to show you, you can actually design a case yourself in roughly about 10 minutes. Same thing if you need a small change. Let's say that your customer decided they just want to rotate one canine a few degrees. You have to go back to these third-party design services and request that change. You have to wait another 24 to 48 hours. So with this system that I'm going to show you, you don't have to do any of that. As mentioned, no skilled technicians are necessary. You can literally have any person off the street that is savvy with software, that has some very minimal clinical knowledge that I'm going to mention. It's only a couple landmarks that you need to know about, and you can have them operate the printers and the design software. There's no desktop software necessary either, meaning you don't have to install anything. That's a huge benefit because, first of all, you don't have to pay license fees. So one license fee, which can go from $4,000 to $8,000 a year, allows you usually to install something in one computer, have one operator using that one software, and that's basically your full capacity. Whereas on the other hand, if you use a web-based service, you can have as many people designing as you have computers connected to the internet. And again, I'm not trying to say here you shouldn't use exocad, you shouldn't use 3Shapes. If you have those tools at your disposal in your laboratory, that's fine. But what you'll notice is that, for example, with the case of dentures, you can have 3 guys designing a denture with exocad or 3Shapes, and the results are not going to be consistent. Each person might design differently, and it's a little bit complicated. Not only that, but while you're rendering for these cases, the exocad or the 3Shapes software will sequester whatever you want to do until it's finished rendering. So you might not be able to do anything with it for about an hour. So basically what I'm trying to say is you can use Dentca Design to design your dentures and free up your exocad or 3Shapes to do crown and bridge to do partials, to do other things. And that way you can expand or triple your productivity that way. You can make designs on the fly. I've heard about people designing these in airplanes, in coffee shops, in the middle of the night for an emergency. And you will always get consistent results due to the AI-based function. So one thing that I really like to mention all the time is that we have to make a switch from the traditional way of manufacturing to a digital mindset. What does it mean? Everybody wants to jump into digital dentures, and they try to always compare them to a regular denture, and it's a completely different concept. First of all, many people, for example, ask me, hey, can you reline the dentures? Can you repair the dentures? And the answer is yes. The dentures are made out of acrylic, just like any conventional denture. But why would you? The cost of doing a hard reline on an immediate denture, for example, is far much higher than reprinting a new one with the software and with the printer that you will have. Also, it's probably going to cost you the same to make a try-in than to make a final. The cost of materials is it's about roughly the same. So you can always print a final, take it to the patient's mouth, everything is good, you just deliver that denture in the second appointment. Changes needed to be done, you can use that as a try-in and then make another final. So this allows you for a lot of time savings, especially if you have a DSO and you have a lot of patient flows coming in. You might want to finish cases as quickly as possible in the less number of appointments as possible. Not only because that increases your revenue per hour, which is something that we'll cover a little bit more on July, but also you open more time to see more patients and make more money. You can make duplicates at the drop of a hat. You have digital files. So of course, if your patients have an emergency and they need a denture quick, you can just reprint another one and send it directly. We have, for example, a while ago, we have a story about a patient who was fishing in the Pacific Ocean and he lost his denture. So the doctor called Dentca, and this was back in the day when we would make the dentures, but it will call your lab. We made a denture, we sent it directly to the customer's hotel as he was traveling. Can you imagine the customer's surprise when he opens up the box and he gets a denture without even having to stop by the dentist? Of course, eventually he came back for adjustments and everything, but he did not stay without a denture for that week and a half that he was going to go away. Also, that means that you're keeping your files. So that patient will always have to go to that dentist to obtain a new copy of that denture if they want to replace it in the future. So client retention is great with the system as well. And lastly, converting immediate dentures is very easy. We'll talk about that in our clinical flows section once we move into different webinars, but you can make an immediate denture and easily transform it into a permanent denture without the hassle of starting the process all over again. So I'm gonna go a little bit, explain about the general manufacturer overview, and then we're gonna go into deeper details in each of these stages. So the general overview of the process of the Dentca Lab process is this. You get your records. Either the customer sends the records to yourself. They can be in physical form or they can be pre-scanned with an intraoral scanner. And then if you got physical records, you can scan them with a laboratory scanner. You're going to obtain 3 scan files, which is upper, lower, and bite. And then we're going to go through a couple steps on the design platform to be able to design the denture. And then the denture can be printed either as a final, as we mentioned, or a try-in, and then eventually make adjustments to that try-in and create the final denture. So first of all is what happens, what do you need to do in order to prepare for design? So there are a lot of different types of record taking, but basically bottom line, as I explained, we always want to obtain 3 matchable scan files, which is a lower and upper. And if you're doing a single arch, for example, it would be an upper intaglio and a lower stone model of the opposing dentition. And then we need a matchable bite, meaning that whatever surfaces are on your upper and your lower, they need to be found on that bite as well, so you can align it properly. These need to be in STL format. We're talking about standard STL format. Don't go with ASCII STL format or OBJ. And then once you have your files, you're ready to proceed. So the first thing you would do is you would go to the Dentca website, and there will be a section over there that will be called Dentca Design. In the Dentca Design section, you will find a lot of resources, by the way. Everything I'm mentioning will be there. It'll have an introductory video. All you have to do is click on New Case and start uploading your STL files. When you first start to upload your upper gum file, you will see that there at the bottom there's a repair intraoral scan file function. By the way, if you click on this function, what the software will do is the software will patch most of the holes and double layers that you might have on your scans, as long as they're not too severe. This is a huge advantage because you don't have to keep patching up your files before you upload them. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to process to the first step, which is alignment. So in the alignment process, you're going to be selecting same points that are on both your upper arch and your bite. You will select 3 different points. You need to make sure that the points are the same shape and the same color. In our newer version, you will get one point that will be a triangle, another will be a square, another will be a rectangle. So they need to be in the same area on both the bite and the upper. And then you'll do the same thing for the lower arch. After that, you'll move on to the next step where you're going to be establishing a trim line. Trim line can be easily established by doing control clicks and just going around all across the surface of your upper and lower arch. If you're doing a single arch, it's important that you also trim the single arch as well, the opposing dentition, so the software can calculate and automatically relieve the occlusion. And then this is the only part where I would say you would need a little bit of dental knowledge. You can easily explain this to any person that you hire, but you need to select the landmarks. And the first landmark, which is always red, has to sit on the incisive papilla in the maxillary. And then 2 posterior ones would go on the hamular notches. And then for the lower, you need to select the 2 retromolar pads. Now, if you have existing teeth and your scan did not reach all the way to the retromolar pads in a single arch, let's say we're doing an upper, you can always try to place it as close as possible to the most posterior section, either in your retromolar pads or your hamular notches. Now, in between these steps, if you're doing an immediate denture, you're going to get an extra step to be able to remove the existing teeth if you want to plan for an immediate. And then you'll go through a verification step where you'll be asked to check your matching. You want to look for a uniform mix or mesh of color between the pink and the purple. It's going to show you what's going to go away, which is going to become transparent, and what it's going to trim or snap, which is going to be the colored parts. And then you will be able to tilt the occlusal plane. If you have wax rims, you can play a little bit with it and change the angulations. And then you're going to get to a tooth generation screen where the setup will be automatically generated for you. It usually requires no adjustments, but if you have any specific changes that you want to do, let's say you want to do mandibular incisal teeth crowding, or you want to create a diastema, or you want to increase the overbite, you can play with these in here, and you can also open and close overbite and VD generation and vertical dimension. You can remove second molars, you can remove second premolars, so you can do a lot of things, and you can even measure things with a ruler and obtain a link for your dentist to approve. So let's say you're the lab, you're designing this for dentists, you create a shareable link that you can then send to the doctor. The doctor can go ahead and review, make sure everything is as he wants it to be, and then you can send it for final gum shield generation. So the process to design a case roughly takes 10 to 15 minutes, depending how skilled you are and how familiar you are with the program. And then final generation will take roughly from 30 minutes to an hour, and then you will be able to download the files. One huge benefit of these files is that every time you check out with the Dentca Design software, you will get trying and final files. So let's say the trying goes well, you want to create that final, you don't have to go back and place an adjustment order. You can just take those final files and place them. So as you can see in the image below, this is roughly what the final denture would look like. You can create another link to share with the doctor once the final denture is generated. And then once you check out, you will have a download button where you can get all the files. And again, you can have all the files for all-in-one, which is for the trine, or you can have posterior and anterior teeth files and denture base for your finals. And you can also download your original files in case you need them as well. So it's a fantastic system, and it's pretty friendly to use. Then let's talk a little bit about fabrication. So let's talk about trines first. So the laboratory, you guys will create a trine based on the virtual model that you created on the STL files that you obtained. And as a small note, as we mentioned, the training step can be skipped if the dentist is comfortable with the impressions, etc. But it's recommended that you always do at least a trine if you have a complicated case. Otherwise, if you feel like you want to send finals, as I mentioned before, you can definitely go ahead and do that. The steps are very simple. All you have to do is pour up your trine material, the Dentca trine material, in your printer. I will go over the printers that we have validated. Roughly, you want to fill out about 3/4 of the tank. And many people ask me about the yield. So roughly, you would be using about 150 grams of material for a small, medium arch and 200 grams for an extra large denture. And then basically, you lock it in and you would start printing. Before that, however, you need to load your files on the printer software, and you need to tilt them a little bit. I would say about 30° on the x-axis. And then you want to set up your supports and your bases. This is very basic stuff. Every printer comes with this software, and they're usually very user-friendly. So don't worry too much about that. The only thing I always do recommend is that you always place the supports on the intaglio side, and that you make sure that you place enough supports to ensure that the prints are not going to fail. Another thing that I would recommend is that you don't make the supports too tall. The more you angle these and the more tall your supports are, the longer it's going to take to print. So you want to have it as short as you can so it takes the least amount of time to print. Once it's done printing, once you've sent the files and it's printing and it's finished, you will basically take the trine out of the plate. You will separate it with basically with a scraper. You will remove the supports. If you make the supports thin enough and add more supports, you can even remove them with your finger. Otherwise, you can use a clipper. And then you're going to basically smooth out any areas. I'm going to show you in more detail how this is done with the final. I'm going to show you some videos. So I'm going to gloss a little bit through this, but basically you're just going to be submerging it in isopropyl alcohol, and then you're going to be post-curing it in a curing unit. It has to be submerged in glycerin, preheated at 60°, and you want to put a glass slab on top of that glycerin to make sure that the denture stays submerged while being cured. And then cure it on your Dentca-approved curing units. I'm going to talk about those at the end of the session as well and show you which ones are approved and which ones you should be using. There's some of them that are single light source. There's some of them that are dual curing. Dual curing is always better because it reduces your manufacture time in half because it's curing both sides at the same time. Otherwise, you have to cure for a specific amount of time, then flip the denture and cure it again. So if you're all about saving time, you want to get a dual curing unit. Then you basically have to wash them, rinse them, and they're ready to be shipped to the doctor. Now, I'm not going to go right now into clinical protocols of how to evaluate the trine, since we're going to have another lecture about that coming in about, I believe, 3 sessions in May. But I do want to talk about the design process when it comes back. So once the doctor has evaluated the trine, he'll usually write down whatever changes he needs. Most of these changes will be either, taking a new bite or a new wash directly on the trine, or letting you know what he wants to move, where and by how much. For example, move the midline to the right 2 millimeters. So you can scan these trines and obtain STL files for a new bite or a new wash, and then you go back into the Dentca website. You find your original order and you click on Adjustment Order. All of your original orders, if you log in, should appear under the Browse Project section. Once you click on Adjustment Order, what's going to happen is it's going to open that tooth setup section over again, where you can make changes to the teeth. You can increase, decrease the size, change the molds. And you'll see two buttons on the upper right that says new wash and new bite. So over there, you can actually upload a new wash or a new bite, and it'll take you again to a matching section where you have to select three dots in each the wash and the original surface, and it'll substitute the surface or move the lower to adjust to the new bite. And then basically you generate the files again and you manufacture the final. So now for the final, I'm going to show you a lot of steps. This is a little bit different than the trying where it's AIO. In this case, as I mentioned, Dentca will generate right posterior, left posterior, and anterior teeth. This is so they're easier to assemble. They kind of go in like Lego blocks. We do recommend you print in 3 parts and not 1 arch to make it easy to seat and make sure that you're seating it properly. You do get the option of getting a full arch, but I do recommend doing the 3 parts. And I'll show you why in a moment. But basically what you want to do is the same thing as before. You load your printer with the denture base, whatever gum shade that you want. You do about, 3/4 of the tank, and then you print the bases, you print the teeth, either with a separate printer. If you're all about saving time, you can have 2 printers running at the same time, or you can, change the liquids in between, and eventually you're going to get to the stage where you have both. Now for the base, I already mentioned more or less what you have to do on the software. It's exactly the same as the one in the trying, but for the teeth, it's always recommended that it's occlusal or incisal edges facing up when you're creating the supports. And again, try to place supports all around the area. So you make it easy to print. You can even angle them, try to get them as close as possible to the ground, again, so it prints much quicker. And this is basically what they look like when they're out of the printer. So you can take your bases, you can take your teeth and start with a clipper removing all the supports, and then basically removing any other areas where you might have leftovers from these supports. And then basically you're going to be putting them together. So here's a short video. I'm going to skip in different parts of this video. I just want to show you a couple things. This video, by the way, is in a resources section. So in here, they're just opening the printer. They're going to be removing any excess that is on the plate. They're trying to make sure that nothing drips in between the tank and the laser. You don't want it to get dirty with the liquid. And then they're going to take it out, and then they're going to be using a scraper to separate it. So they separate it. They're using the clippers to clean it out. And then they're going to be removing the base and the supports, and they're going to be putting it in isopropyl alcohol. And you take a little brush and you start cleaning the area. So once this is done, you will repeat the same step with the teeth, and you're going to be submerging the teeth and cleaning them as well. And then you're going to be cleaning out the different areas. So now we're going to move to a different section. So what we're going to be doing right when we have everything and it's been cleaned is we're going to be taking the same impression material that we use for the base, and with a dropper, we're going to be adding material to the sockets. So you want to add on all of the posterior section of one side, and then you're going to push those teeth into the base, and then you're going to temporarily cure them with a small curing unit. And I'll show you how in a moment. Essentially, what you want to do is you want to make sure that they're bonded, and eventually you might want to be building the papillas as well to make it look more aesthetic. So what they're doing right there is they're spreading out the material, and then they're going to be placing the teeth. They're going to be applying pressure, and then they're adding a little bit more of material in a moment. But basically, you can take any small curing unit and do this. You can buy a nail curing unit and use it for this purpose. And then once all the teeth are in place, they will be building the incisive papillas a little bit more to make them more aesthetic. And then basically that would be it for this section. So they're just adding teeth and teeth until they finish. So in here, as I mentioned, they're building a little bit more of the papillas. This is what it should look like before you polish it. And then you should be checking the occlusion, make sure everything is correct, make sure everything is right. If something is off, this is your opportunity to separate it. Later on, after you do the post-curing, you're not going to be able to separate the teeth from the base. One thing I should mention is once it's properly and fully cured, the teeth fuses to the base as it's the same material, and it becomes monolithic in nature, meaning if you try to separate the teeth from the base, with a set of pliers and applying an extreme amount of force, you're going to be breaking the denture before you can separate the teeth from the base. So there's no more teeth popping issues here. Also, the biggest benefit of doing printed like this versus using stock teeth is that you get no changes from design to final product. When you're milling, when you're doing a conventional denture, there's a chance that you're going to overgrind, and when you place the teeth in the surface, they could change angulation, and it's no longer what you originally designed. With this, the teeth being in blocks and going in the exact same position, the final product is going to be as close as it can get to the design portion. As I mentioned before, once you're ready to finish the curing process, preheat your glycerol to about 60 degrees, place your dentures, put a glass slab on top, make sure they stay submerged, and then you cure them for the amount of time that is shown in the instructions for use, which you can find on the Dentca website for each of our approved curing units. If it's not a dual curing unit, you might need to flip them and then cure them again before you can do the final section. So this is what they look like when they're cured, and then all you have to do is proceed to the final portion, which is basically polishing the denture. Dentures are being polished here with pumice, and then we're using conventional white polishing paste to finish them. So whatever you do to normally polish a conventional denture, you do the exact same steps to polish one of these dentures. So they'll proceed from pumice to the white paste and a dry lathe, and they'll do exactly what you would do with a conventional denture. And in the end, the denture should look fairly nice. Now, many people ask me, well, what about aesthetics? I've heard that one of the disadvantages of printed is that the teeth are monochromatic. And yes, you know, it's true. The teeth are monochromatic because you can only print in one color. However, as you can see here in this image that was kindly provided by Renata Vano, you can do really nice aesthetic things with your dentures. You can layer them with composite, you can stain them, you can do anything you can do with a conventional denture to make them look hyper realistic if you need them to be. Now, I would like to cover a little bit about additional laboratory information. So just so you guys know, Dentca has 3D printable materials available. The Dentca Denture base is available in light, reddish, original, and dark pink. Those are 4 shades. And then denture teeth is available in 7 shades, A1, A2, A3, A3.5, B1, B2, and BL. And then the trine is in a shade similar to A2. And many people ask me about the yields. So you're looking roughly about 25 arches for the denture-based material, about 50 arches for the teeth material. They're all in 1 kilogram bottles. And then roughly about 20 arches for trine material. This, if you want to calculate your yields, is the best way to do it. Now, these numbers are an average, by the way. Of course, if you have larger arches, then you're going to be using more material. So don't take this as written in stone. Basically, it can vary a little bit, but that's what we've calculated in a conservative number. Now, this is a list of the different printers that we currently support. There's the Dentca Cine 3D printer, WebMix, Asiga Max, Asiga Pro, the M2 series, the Sprint Ray Model S, Model Pro. There's also the Acrueta printer from WebMix. And then these are the curing units that you can obtain over there in the market. You can call the distributor director and obtain one of them. I believe the Dymax curing unit is dual curing. Some of them are in the Dreves as well. And then just a brief mention about a couple other products. Dentca also have crown and bridge material. We have it available in the same teeth shades as the ones you've seen for denture teeth. This is for making temporary crown and bridge provisionals. You prepare the tooth, you print one of these, and then you deliver it like you would in a regular one if you're planning to do a metal porcelain crown later on. So the process for curing and everything else is the same as I showed with everything else. Please do not interchange or think of interchanging the crown and bridge material for the denture teeth material. Denture teeth material is for denture teeth, crown and bridge material is for crown and bridge. Everything is FDA cleared class 2. And we'll have a couple surprises coming up next year as far as new products go. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I do want to give each and every one of you the time to answer all of your questions. So instead of opening the forum here to public questions, please send me an email or give me a call, and I will be more than happy to spend time with you one-to-one and explain any details that you might have questions for. My contact information is there. And if you want also a one-on-one tutorial on Dentca design at some point, please let me know and maybe we can schedule something in the books. I'm looking forward to seeing you all in March, where we're going to get Ryan Renier speak about general processes, start to finish of the denture manufacture and clinical aspects. Then we're going to dedicate an entire webinar to the clinical section, how to take what happens on the trying stage, how to deliver a final, what do you do when you got an issue with a bite, what do you do when you got a retention issue. Then we're going to be covering a little bit about how to get good records for this flow, a little bit also in July about troubleshooting any Dentca design major issues Q&A sort of things. And the most important one, that if you own a DSO or if you own your own practice, your own lab, you might want to go into the last one. We're going to be talking about profitability with the Dentca Lab model and digital dentures. So you really don't want to miss that one. So that is all on my end. I thank you all for attending, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon in our next webinar session next month.